This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air at this hour because after 22 days, the House finally has a new speaker, ending an historic and chaotic, bitter chapter on Capitol Hill. Republican Mike Johnson of Louisiana winning the Speaker's gavel following the ousting of former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. McCarthy voted for him today, a move led by some in his own party earlier this month. All of those who voted to get rid of Kevin McCarthy voted for Johnson today. Now, Johnson needed 215 votes to win and could only afford to lose 5 Republican votes. But as you can see here, he didn't lose any. He has succeeded where 3 previous nominees failed. Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan, and Tom Emmer, just yesterday nominated, was forced to step aside hours later after not gaining enough support, and most notably when Donald Trump said that he should not be Speaker of the House. The sharply divided Republican Party trying to project unity today, creating a photo op showing them rallying around Johnson overnight following a closed-door meeting. Johnson, a staunch Trump ally, voted against certifying the 2020 election, even in the hours after the attack on the Capitol. The House has been at a standstill without a speaker, no work being done as wars rage in Israel and in Ukraine. President Biden asking Congress to provide more than $100 billion in foreign aid. There's also the looming threat of a government shutdown on November 17th. There was a need, obviously, you don't need me to state this, for a Speaker of the House. Let's bring in Rachel Scott, who's been live on the Hill every step of the way for us. Rachel, this is notable. We haven't seen this before. 22 days and finally a Speaker.
David, a little-known Republican from Louisiana was able to do what several nominees, candidates, and even members of Republican leadership were not able to do, and that was unite the Republican Party and elect a Speaker of the House. You mentioned it, but all 8 of those Republicans that voted to oust Kevin McCarthy from the Speaker's office just 3 weeks ago got in line and did support Johnson to become the next Speaker of the House. But make no mistake about it, this is a conference that is still bitterly divided, and there are major challenges ahead. The deadline to fund the government right before Thanksgiving. You have the president's request for additional aid to both Ukraine and Israel. So far, Johnson has not said whether or not he supports that package, and he'll be walking into the Speaker's office with far less experience than his predecessors. In fact, he has the least amount of experience than any speaker in 140 years, David.
Stick with us here, Rachel, while we listen to the room here on the House floor. Listening for the gavel, a silent House floor, and again, all Republicans voting in favor here today of Mike Johnson of Louisiana. As Rachel points out, a little-known Republican has made his stance on major issues in this country very clear on abortion. He has questioned aid for Ukraine. One of the issues getting a lot of attention in just the last 24 hours since his name surfaced, of course, his vote not to certify the election in the hours after the attack on the Capitol. When asked about that in the last 24 hours, Republicans rallying around him, strongly signaling that they did not like the question. Governor Chris Christie, obviously presidential candidate, said of this nominee, he's wrong when it comes to not certifying the election, but, you know, we need the Speaker of the House, and we've had election deniers as nominees. We've had non-election deniers as nominees, and none of them have been able to get to 217 votes. We can continue, this is what Chris Christie said, to have the false elections denying argument. It will continue to happen, but I just am happy, as I said, that it appears we're going to pick someone who might not be my choice, but that's okay. Rachel Scott, is that essentially the belief of many moderate Republicans in the House, that perhaps exhaustion played a role here and their absolute need to have a speaker in place?
Exhaustion played a very critical role. In fact, I could tell you many moderate Republicans told me they're frankly tired of this. They went home over the weekend.
In their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 429, of which the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 220 votes. And the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 209 votes. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress.
And there you have it, the announcement there on the floor of the House. The new House Speaker now in place, Mike Johnson of Louisiana. He did not lose one Republican vote after so many rounds of votes and, quite frankly, so many nominees to become the next Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson. Back to Rachel Scott to finish that thought. And Rachel, just the sheer exhaustion within Republican ranks playing a part in today's vote.
Yes, David, 22 days in since Kevin McCarthy was first ousted as Speaker of the House. We've been through Republican nominee after Republican nominee. Moderate Republicans were extremely frustrated. They went back home to their conferences and they heard from their constituents who said that they want the House to get back to business. They are worried that this lack of urgency, that the House being paralyzed would honestly put the majority of Republicans at stake in the next election. And so urgency here played a key role, as well as sheer exhaustion. David.
And Rachel, as we await Mike Johnson here in the chamber, where does he stand? Has he said anything publicly about this request from President Biden in recent days for a significant amount of foreign aid, given these wars playing out, the Israel war with Hamas and the continuing war in Ukraine?
He hasn't said much. In fact, I tried to ask him this question just yesterday, shortly after he won the nomination to become the Speaker of the House. I asked him whether or not he supports additional aid to Ukraine and Israel. He told me that he didn't want to talk policy at the moment, and so he ignored those questions. So he'll certainly be facing a lot of questions here as the president emphasizes that the need for aid here is urgent to both Israel and Ukraine. And again, the House has not been able to even consider any of the additional supplemental to aid for Ukraine or Israel because the House has been at a standstill now for 3 weeks.
He is now the Speaker of the House. Perhaps views will shift somewhat, given his leadership role now here today in this historic moment, 22 days without a Speaker. He has questioned aid for Ukraine before. Perhaps that will become an issue now as we move forward in deliberating this request for foreign aid at this urgent moment from President Biden. And so with that, let's bring in Mary Bruce, our chief White House correspondent. Mary, we know the White House is going to continue to push for this aid, but big picture here, in addition to that, the battle lines in this race for president in 2024 etched a little deeper even today with the selection of this speaker and some of the issues he's been outspoken on.
Absolutely, David. Look, the Speaker of the House will now have a huge impact and sway over what gets done here in Washington, what both parties are going to be able to accomplish, what of the president's remaining agenda can get done, just as voters are starting to take a close look and we head into this critical election year. You mentioned those immediate, pressing, very big challenges, including this upwards of $100 billion foreign aid package that the president is after. We know that Johnson has voted against additional funding for Ukraine in the past. What will he do going forward? And, of course, the immediate need to fund the government. They have just a few weeks to avoid another government shutdown. Johnson has suggested he's open to a short-term spending deal. Lots of questions about what exactly that looks like. But when you take a step back, you have had 22 days, 14 candidates, 4 nominees, multiple votes. It doesn't bode well for the prospect that this Republican House is going to be able to make progress on these issues quickly. Just because they finally coalesced around a speaker doesn't mean that all of the deep divisions, all of the challenges within the Republican Party in the House of Representatives are suddenly a thing of the past. And Johnson is someone who doesn't have a lot of leadership experience. He's never held a senior leadership role. He's never chaired a full-time committee. He certainly doesn't have meaningful relationships with Democratic leaders in Congress. He doesn't have much of a relationship, if any, with the current president, though Joe Biden has said all along throughout this chaos that he will work with whomever the Speaker of the House is, though he has conceded, David, that some candidates would be more easy to work with than others.
One other point, though, Mary, involves obviously who President Biden could very well be up against in this race for the White House again, the former president, Donald Trump. We saw that his choices in the past did not get elected Speaker of the House, but we also saw the power of Trump's words yesterday in also eliminating more moderate Republicans from getting there as well.
Yeah, Donald Trump single-handedly torpedoed Tom Emmer, accusing him of being a Republican in name only. You have seen this back and forth going on with Republicans, nominating someone who is more far-right, someone who has Donald Trump's support, then a more moderate candidate, back and forth, back and forth. All it does, David, is show Donald Trump's continued hold, really his iron grip over so many in the Republican Party and the sway that he still has. And now, of course, you have someone who has backed Donald Trump, one of his close allies, someone who fought to overturn the results of the 2020 election, now in control of the Republican House.
You're watching ABC News Live coverage of a new speaker named by the House of Representatives. Republicans voting unanimously for Republican Mike Johnson of Louisiana today. Conservative, lesser-known Republican from Louisiana. We're waiting for him to walk into the chamber with the new title of Speaker of the House. And Rachel Scott, in the meantime, some of these key issues, he might be lesser known, but what is known certainly is his stance on key issues, key dividing lines in this country.
Exactly, David. So we know that he objected voting to overturn the results of the 2020 election, for starters. I tried pressing him on whether he stands by that vote just yesterday, and he ignored the questions. We know that he is a staunch supporter against abortion rights. So he does support a 15-week nationwide abortion ban with a few exceptions, including rape, incest, and life to save the mother's life. And we also know that he has opposed Ukraine funding in the past, and that is going to be a critical issue that's going to come to the forefront in just a matter of days that he will have to figure out with his conference as they start to consider the president's supplemental request for additional aid to both Israel and Ukraine. I can tell you that a growing number of Republicans here on Capitol Hill are very skeptical about providing billions of dollars in more funding to Ukraine. They believe that should be brought up separately, that it shouldn't be considered or tied together with additional funding to Israel. And so he will still face these very same challenges that you saw from former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, with trying to unite his conference around a possible supplemental and additional aid to Ukraine. But not only that, but also government funding as well. We know that some Republicans are opposed to any sort of short-term deal, and so now he's going to have to hash that out with his conference.
Do we know what his relationship is with more moderate Republicans, Rachel?
At this point, David, I can tell you that he does have a pretty good relationship, a cordial relationship with moderate Republicans. But again, this is not someone that has been in the driver's seat, driving any sort of policy decisions or hashing out or brokering any deals. And that is going to be key here. Even over on the Senate side today, you had some Senate Republicans that were joking that they had to Google his name. And this is the incoming Speaker of the House. This is the person that's going to be the second in line to the presidency. And so he is going to face some initial challenges here with even just reaching across to his own conference, trying to work with more moderate members of his own party, but also over in the Senate as well, so that Republicans present a unified stance when it comes to considering additional aid to Ukraine, Israel, and as well as that government funding package.
All right, Rachel Scott on the Hill, as she has been for the last several weeks, as we have all witnessed as a country, this battle over who the next speaker would be. And Republicans have voted in the House just moments ago to elect Mike Johnson of Louisiana, conservative Republican, to be their next Speaker of the House, unanimously supporting him. There was not one Republican who dissented. And of note, the 8 Republicans who worked to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, all voting for Mike Johnson here late today. And as you heard from Rachel and from Mary, the dividing lines and some of these key issues become an immediate part of this story moving forward, particularly the immediate concern from the White House over this foreign aid for Israel and the war against Hamas, because part of that request involves money for Ukraine as well. And we know that Mike Johnson has questioned aid for Ukraine in the past. Whether or not that becomes an issue for him now as Speaker of the House, we'll be watching very closely, in addition to some of the other large issues as we enter this race for the White House in 2024, in particular his anti-abortion rights stance, not just at the state level, but at the national level. That also becomes something that will be reported out in the days and weeks to come. Our coverage of the new speaker will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and of course, I'll be back with the entire team. My thanks to Rachel and Mary, and we'll see you later for World News Tonight. Take care.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.